Penguin Random House Audio presents
The Full Moon Coffee Shop. Written by Mai Mochizuki. Translated by Jessie Kirkwood. And read by Tomoko Komura, Yuriri Naka, and Sadao Ueda.
Prologue. It was early April, and my apartment windows were wide open. A crisp spring breeze swept in, along with the beautiful sound of Elgar's Salute d'amour, love's greeting, being played on the piano. As if summoned by the music, a cat appeared on the railing of my balcony. Perhaps it belonged to one of the other residents. After all, pets were allowed in my apartment block. It was a regular tortoiseshell cat, its fur a pretty mix of brown and black. In spite of the obvious danger, it picked its way along the railing with a dainty assurance. I found myself gazing at it in total admiration. Maybe it was the clear blue sky or the pink cherry blossom trees in the distance, but the whole scene resembled a painting. Meanwhile, I was cooking lunch, or pretending to. In reality, I was just chopping up some spring onion to chuck on top of my instant ramen. Sure, I was going to add some chopped carrots, bean sprouts, and spinach stir-fried in sesame oil, but it wasn't exactly refined cuisine. And the result definitely didn't look like any kind of painting. The cat had come to a halt halfway along the railing and was narrowing its eyes in rapture, as if it too was appreciating the music coming from the piano below. Its long tail swished back and forth like a pendulum. I lived in a tiny studio apartment, and the kitchen was only a few steps from the balcony. The cat noticed me and looked around, giving me a little meow. Salut du chat, I thought, smiling to myself. I washed my hands and made my way over to the balcony, but by the time I slid the screen door open with a clatter, the cat had disappeared. I glanced around, but it was nowhere to be seen. I lived on the 3rd floor. Worrying it might have slipped, I looked over the edge of the railing, but there was no sign of it down there either. A cat would never fall like that, I reminded myself. Relieved, I leaned against the railing. Salute d'amour came to an end, and now began Chopin's Etude No. 3, sometimes known as the Farewell. I sighed, drooping my head slightly. Farewells were not what I wanted to be thinking about. I knew that breaking up was always hard. But it felt even harder when you were a 40-year-old woman who thought she'd finally found the one. We'd been together so long that I'd begun to assume we always would be. But I realized you can't take anything for granted. I mean, after all, even cats sometimes lose their footing. This thought made me anxious, and I looked back down at the ground. There was still no sign of the cat. Wherever it had gone, it seemed to be doing just fine. If anyone had taken a fall, it was me. Where had I gone so wrong? Hearing excited voices from below, I glanced down once more and saw a group of children strolling down the street. They looked to be in the early years of primary school, and would be on their spring holidays now. A wave of nostalgia rushed over me, and I wondered how my old pupils were doing. Maybe, I thought, I shouldn't have quit teaching after all. But if I was still a teacher, in my present state, some little tyrant would inevitably run up to me and ask the merciless question, "Miss, why aren't you married?" It would have been enough to make me burst into tears in front of the entire class. Yes, I was glad I'd given that job up. Nodding emphatically as if to convince myself, I pulled the screen door closed and made my way back inside. Before I knew it, the piano playing had come to an end. Chapter 1. An Aquarius Trifle. Mizuki Serikawa. 1. 水亀座のトライフル. Delicious. Even if I did say so myself. Instant ramen topped with vegetables and spring onion. Not the most elegant meal, but one that never failed to hit the spot. I took my empty bowl to the kitchen, gave it a quick rinse and set it on the draining board. Then I took a cloth and gave the dining table a thorough wipe. It was barely big enough for one person to eat at. In my tiny apartment, this was where I ate and worked. I poured myself a coffee, positioned my laptop back on the table and sat down. Then, taking a sip from my mug, I began flicking through my reference materials. I was looking at a character sheet, its pages packed with illustrations of a handsome young man. What's this guy's story again? He was supposed to be the son of a rich and distinguished family, but his hair was a mix of red, blue, and yellow, and he didn't look very distinguished to me. But then again, we were talking about a video game here. People didn't care too much about the details. I wrote scripts for a living. Right now, I was working on one for a mobile dating game. Not the main script. Someone else was doing that. My job was to write the script for when the player ended up with a supporting character, rather than the happy ending where they managed to win the heart of the hero. It was a middle-of-the-road sort of ending, which meant the script had to be pretty middling too. The idea was that the player would feel vaguely dissatisfied by the outcome, but also keep playing the game. It wasn't a very long script either, a 30-kilobyte episode. It must be only video game writers who have their work measured not in pages or words, but in kilobytes. I checked my instructions. End with a scene where they kiss them on the cheek or forehead. Location should be near a body of water. Right. No kissing on the lips. As for the body of water, the male character was supposed to be the indoor type, so a seaside or river didn't quite feel right. A hotel pool would do the trick. I leafed through the pages, then opened up my notepad. The writing inside was such a squiggly mess that anyone else would struggle to decipher it. It outlined my plot, if you could call it that, for the character. When writing the side character, the goal was always to make the player feel slightly frustrated, so they'd think to themselves, I don't like how that turned out. Guess I'll have to try dating the hero if I want my happy ending. That meant including a lot of failed dates, and any love scenes had to be pretty subdued affairs. In its own way, it was pretty challenging work. When I'd finished reviewing my notes, I started to write. Soon the sound of my fingers tapping away at my computer keyboard fell into step with the music I was playing. Most of the game scripts I worked on were pretty conventional. I was good at writing that sort of thing, so I enjoyed the work. Of course, I'd have preferred to write the love scenes for the hero. But that's more than I can ask for at this point. Though it was true I'd once worked on much more important things, I tried to clear my head and get back to writing. 30 kilobytes could be various page lengths, depending on the amount of text, but it was basically the length of a short story. When I was about a third of the way through, I sat up in my chair and straightened my back. The clock showed 3 in the afternoon.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?